All right, everyone, welcome back to Sketchcraft Live. So what I'm doing here is setting up a little art tip video while I actually do my job. So this is a cover that I'm painting through between tonight and tomorrow for Skylanders, Superchargers, and I'm going to do a lot of my actual color and gradient maps. And I thought what I would do is actually show how I pick the colors and set all this stuff up. So first, you need a piece of art. This is the art. Now, uh, I've already drawn this, so there's videos on the channel on how I did all that. But basically, the main characters are fully inked, drawn and inked. The background is going to be fully painted, so you can see these grid lines are really there for reference. I'm not going to keep these lines. The background temple and figures here are more detailed, but they're going to be fully painted, but just a little bit more detail. These guys are going to be more painted, so they're not fully inked, and then these guys will be inked. So first thing you got to do is have a color guide. I actually start off with a roughie. This is what I concept before I even draw this. So I come up with a bunch of ideas, kick it back to my editors. They say, hey, that's great. We want this idea. And then I flesh that idea out, right? Which you can sort of see, you know? And then I will be picking from these colors as well as actual reference of the characters. So the basic idea about gradient maps, and I'm going to use this as an example, is now the way most people think about coloring is they say you wanted this to be blue, right? This is this light blue, dark blue. You maybe would select a color, right? Like you'd select the blue, and then you paint that blue, and then you select this, and then you do this, and then maybe you get a blending brush and kind of, you know, do this and kind of blend in between. This shit takes forever. So what I've been able to do, right, is I don't like direct color picking all the time, but let's just get a good example of this. I got these two blues, right? What I would do is, let me set this to black, hit saturation, is I would actually paint it in black and white, right? Like this. And then selecting the colors I need, in this case, a light blue and a dark blue, go here, these are your adjustment layers, select gradient maps. And then what Photoshop is doing is it's saying anything that's white is going to be this color, anything's black is going to be this color. So from there, you can start to rebuild the color base, and you can kind of come in here and give it a little bit more. It can be black, it can be light blue, you can do all sorts of shit, right? So I can take this up in the purple range and give it an off black if I don't want it to be true black, and then I could move this here and then make the true white maybe closer to white, not exactly white, or even a slight green. Let me click new, and then what you would do is I would be using my flats, a mask, to mask it in. In this case, uh, so you can paint this right back in. And this is a great way to just sort of turn your tonal work into color, and then you can build paint on top. Because it kind of sometimes only gets you so far. But if we group this, see, now that you can then take these adjustment layers and see right now it's set to normal. You can set it to color. And what that will do is whites will still stay in here, black will still stay in here. Anything in between the value range will receive a color. So sometimes I like to set it to color to neutralize it out, and then set it back to either overlay if I want more saturations, or multiply, and then turn the base down. Really darken works good because it only fills in areas I want it to. So I'm gonna multiply and set it down to like 50%. And then I'll build little groups of gradient maps. All right, so right there, probably a little too dark. So maybe we can take this and set it to an overlay and turn it down to like 25%. And flipping between, I did no painting, right? So that's the basic idea we're going to apply over the whole piece. And the brilliant part about this is that, one, you're not blending colors all day. Two, you build up on top. So once you have all your gradients set up, you can then tonalize it to fit the mood of the piece. and then also add in light sources, and you could paint color in, all sorts of shit. So this I have taught myself how to do over the last 6 months. And let's say an editor wants to change those gloves to red to green. I mean, you can change all that in the gradient maps. You don't have to paint new colors and stuff. So it took like 2 seconds, right? So how am I going to apply this to my actual art? Well, that's the goal here, right? So the first thing I do is I draw it, and then I don't like doing flats. Flats in coloring terms are basically selections. You would go through, paint each character, and each piece you want to be able to select a different color so that you can select them as you color along. I had my buddy Brandon Leadheavy, aka Leadheavy, do flats now for me, so I don't have to deal with that nonsense. And so he comes back with this. Now, this does not reflect the colors I'm going to use. This reflects, these are purely for selection purposes. So I could select all these pieces. All the characters are, layered separately. So I could select each individual character. Yeah, it's not based on color. So the first thing I do is I desat the image. And what that means is just take an empty layer and fill it with black and set it to saturation. So that means anything underneath is going to be tonalized. I found that that's the best thing to do. It maintains color schemes. So let's just put it that way. I just set it, I fill a layer with black, set it to saturation, and you're good to go. Then because I'm setting up gradient maps, and gradient maps are based on blends, here it's a lot of, right? If I just use this as reference, you're just getting kind of weird solid colors. I wanted to see some basic tonal lighting, so I just set a gradient map. I kind of did this right before I started. A black and white gradient, not a gradient map, set a gradient and just set it to multiply. And all I did was took my Roughy and I made a desat layer. So I can kind of follow what things should be. This should be a little lighter, this should be a little darker. So I can sort of see what it looks like tonally. From here on out, I'm going to be using terms like value and tonal. When I say value and tonal, I'm talking about black and white. If I say hue, that means color. So in case you don't know. So, and then I get to build my gradient maps based on that. So I'm going to put those actually above the lines, make a new folder. I'm just going to grad maps. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is go to my reference file, which is on another monitor. And I'm just going to say, okay, let's set up this guy. So I can just sort of create a gradient map based on these colors. Now this can be a little tedious. So the idea is that once you get these set up, you have them forever. So as you start to color the same characters over and over again, you just drop the gradient maps and you don't have to make them again. So if you ever have a fire character, you already got it done. If you ever have lightning, you already got it done. So you start to save gradients. All right, and so just for the lack of wanting to be able to see, I'm going to make a new layer here and just try to create a little base gradient so I can sort of see what he'll look like. And I'm going to group my initial gradient map and call this rock fire. And now that I got him selected, I'm going to mask him out. And if I come down here, I know I need the white to be actually pure yellow. So I'm just going to paint in some white so I can just quickly reference this out. Actually, I want to just use the airbrush. Okay. Now I'm going to take this and set this to color. So you can see the difference, right? It's maintained the hue. And here it's sort of going over the whole piece. So let's come here. Sometimes you got to slide these along. And then I know I need almost a pure white core yellow, slight off-white yellow. Then we'll move here. Gonna move this down. Let's move this in. Why am I not? Let's shut this right up. So I'm starting to see it. We can back that out just a little bit to try and relieve some of the banding. Banding is where you get these little clamped areas of color. All right, so now let me just set this to color and then make a duplicate and set it to normal and turn the opacity down to about 60. One of the things I did on the lines is, see, these are turned orange, is all of his detail on Rockeye is on a separate layer, and I've turned the opacity down. So I knew I would get those to be a separate color. So what this means is, right, check this out. Come over here and select his rock areas, right? Is, let's say I start to paint in between these cracks. So now I'm not blending all those colors together, right? I'm just painting black and white underneath. Now, it's not going over the line, so let's see. What's the best way to do that? I almost wonder if I should paint out. That's where you'd have to paint over the lines to get the things you need on top. So you'd set it up, and then once the grab maps are set up, you paint over to get all the additional bits out. Now, the thing that I want to see here is, let me take this piece right here, right? And I will go back to my reference. And I'm selecting the exact grayscale on the reference as I have here. So I know that I want these oranges for rocks at medium, and then I want these to be brighter. So I got to go through and all these rocks got to be set up, right? So this guy's going to be a little bit of a fucking pain in the ass. So, but that sets up the rock fire part, right? And then now I need this blue and then metal. So blue, we'll call that blue chrome, blue steel, and then we'll call that, something else, gunmetal. So first thing I got to do is make sure I'm only selecting there, his rock pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this as colors. Rev 01. So let me check here. Line layers. I'll show you what I'm doing here in 1 second. Give me. Right. So what's up with that? I think my flats were not set up correctly. Let's take a look. Yeah, see, he didn't set these teeth up right. So let me go back and see why that isn't set up right. Brandon. This is so annoying, dude. I gotta go in here and fix this shit. Brandon's gonna hear about this. there anything else all fucking missing? That's fixed. That was annoying. Sorry about that. So set that back up. And then get rid of that. And turn the grad maps back on. Desat. And then now go back to the grad maps, delete that mask, and turn that back on. And I'm just going over here and make sure that I'm not getting bleed through. Duplicate, merge. We'll get rid of that. All right, so let's make the blue steel. So, which I kind of already did. So I'm going to go back to my gradient maps, create a new folder, name it blue steel, and then we'll go to the gradient maps, and we'll select that one that I made the first time around. And then we'll mask that. And then what I need to do here is give myself just a little bit of a gradient so I can see. Oh, I see why. And now I need, those eyes should be Rockfire as well. And then this right here should be blue steel. This is just a completely different way of like coloring. Setting it up can be a little bit, like I said, of a chore. That being said, once you have these colors made, oh wow, I mean like way different, you know? Plus it's just faster to paint in black and white than it is to be blending color all day. His teeth should be that. So, and then now I need what do we call it? Gunmetal. Let's just call it gray steel. Gray steel. I like caps. Gray steel. Set that up there. gradient map. Now, if it looks inverted, it's because you put the light in the dark and the dark in the light. You know, you can hit reverse and fix it. However, every time you do that, if you hit reverse, you're still working backwards. I just prefer to work frontways. So everything is black to white. In this case, let's select this one, change this to an off. All right, and then we'll create new. Click OK. And his is set up. So his gradient maps are set up. He needs to still be painted. So now we move on to trigger happy. Let me turn this off. So and then we'll go to my ref and turn his reference on. All right, so he's got this orange to cream. So I think the fur I'll do first. G, trigger cream. I think there's kind of a yellowish saturation in there a little bit. You gotta care about direct color picking because you lose hue intensity. So I think in this case I'm going to just have his fur. This fur selected. Yeah. And then I'm going to create me a little gradient for reference. So I can make certain that it's giving me Control G. Control E. So what I need to do here is just mask out wonder if I should just avoid that trouble right now. Yeah, I'm just going to avoid that and put the lines on top for now so I can deal with how I want to code that later. Color. All right, save myself a lot of trouble. Now he needs this sort of tangerine salmon. Make sure when you're selecting colors, you're not selecting a mask. He's a sort of tangerine to salmon color. Put that closer to there. Okay, and this one I might actually set that to color. So I see that that's the difference. I actually can retain the values. I want that to be more contrast based. So you're asking, well, what do you do? Because if you look, right, he's got this cream to orange fur. So what I would do is we'll take this, that mask. I'm going to delete this mask. And then, so it's got the fur as a whole. Then I'm going to take this mask, fill it with black. And then what you can do is mask in the areas you want. And the mask just paint in the areas you want. You know, I can come in, once I paint fur underneath and everything and value, once I paint all that in, I can come back and blend these fur areas together in color. Or just straight paint on top of it if I wanted to. So. I just, after the flats are done, I try to get the gradient maps done quickly before I start painting, because it will sort of inform what I need to paint or how I need to paint things. And that becomes clearer as to why that is as you actually do it. I don't have a big list of reasons why. It just, I found doing this, that this is the next step for me. And then come over here and we'll get this. And then his tongue should be the same color. So we'll come to here and we'll just fill that in. Oh, and make sure it's in both spots. Now, I'm going to duplicate this really quick and set it to normal. And just sort of blend the two. I don't know. Let me see. All right. The thing to remember too is my color settings look differently. I preview in CMYK, so I'm working in RGB and I preview in CMYK. And if I turn off CMYK preview, you kind of see it ends up more saturated and contrasty. So that makes a big difference. Like my CMYK settings are reflect how this will actually print. All right, so now I need this sort of orange, cream to orange bit. For this, these pieces here. Orange suit. And then I'll come here and add a bit more of that. And then I'll just create a gradient so I can test to see what this will look like. So it's not my final lighting gradients, just so I can see what this is gonna. I can just airbrush white in so I can see. Yeah, that'll give me what I want. Now I need white suit. Brandon's flats do not work. I will fix this. So let's just make a new G. I'll call this white suit. Gradient map. And see, it bases the order on what's currently in your foreground background colors. So it can. Okay, we'll set that to color. We'll turn that off. Come back. Let's look at that again. And because his flats they're bleeding into one another here. I'm just gonna. I gotta come here and. Make sure I'm not painting fur in. And then his eyes, I'm just going to use red fire. So I can come back to, I'm sorry, rock fire. And come back here. I'll set those up. And his gun isn't really, it's a little different. I need his teeth. So we'll go back to white suit and set those up. I'm just really quite interested in what. Yeah, see, he didn't mask those out at all. So let's go to the orange suit. Gradients. And so now I need to figure out his guns. So we have file, save. We'll call it gold gun. And then I'm just going to go ahead and unselect that. We'll create a new gradient map. If I come here, yeah, that's fine. All right, so I got these two guys in the background. So let me actually get the background first. I probably should have done the background before I even started. And this is going to be based off my initial roughie. So I'm going to need two basic. Jungle night. And then we'll set this gradient maps. Color. So first things first. G. I thought I had that already set up. I did. So I need 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, 1, 2. So I'm knocking them out of this gradient because I need to be able to. And then I'll get these. %. Let's go 70. Take it down to 60. You can always go darker. And then skull guy. All right, that'd be a good start. So I can come back to Jungle Knight. Set the color, turn it down, 60%, duplicate, multiply. What is causing that? What's causing that? Yeah, something. That's why. So again, this is just getting the tone, all the tones where they need to be. It's not painting and trying to set up lighting schemes right now, and it looks airbrushy and dodgy. It looks horrible. That's fine. The trick is you got to get, the you want Photoshop to do the painting, a lot of the painting for you. So the only trick that I'm having right now, since I didn't do the flats, like when something doesn't work, I'm like, what, so I got to tell Brandon to slow down and double check his work from now on, because having to fix some of this stuff is not as long as doing it myself, but it's tedious. All right, so and then this Jungle Knight. $50. Where's all my lines? See, like this is because of those things not being separated properly. And go over here and make sure those are filled in where they need to be. And these two. All right, so now I gotta get these two guys. Oh, I gotta get the lighting too. Let me save this. This is why I don't like doing my own flats though too, because I gotta do flats and then I gotta do this. So I should be able to get these done, and then I'm gonna go make dinner, and then I'll come back and start painting. So let's just, now I need this green light. Green glow, and then again, this is just reference, not the actual final rendering. Color, no. Hey, thank you. So if I came, yeah, that's what I thought. Those eyes should be above their shade layer. That's what was going on. So if I came over here and did these little glows for eyes, right? So these lines are going to go away when I get done. So then I can go and just paint in, you know, like light sources. See? So once there's actual like light sources painted in, that already they're actually painted. So if I came over here and was like, oh, in black and white, you know, then when I go to paint in, so forth, so forth. All right, so as you can see, like even right now, like I'm not coloring anything. Photoshop's coloring for me. So, like I said, this is really bad. It's not, you know, the way it needs to be, but the setup is there. So let's just save that, and then we'll get the last two guys done. Then I come back and do all the painting, and then that's when the views show up. Oh my God, it looks so good. But the trick with art, folks, is you got to be able to see where it's going. Don't demand like an immediate return right away. Like, oh my God, it's not. I need to get like it's perfect right now. You know, it's your ability to see what it's going to be. So I'll get that. And then where's the other guy? So when I come to my reference folder, and we'll start with the blue guy. So I already know coming into this that the blue, his gloves are figured out, right? Because we already made that. So I'll come here. And all of his blue parts that are highlighted in the flat just get plugged right in. So that's not actual lighting, it's just reference lighting. So now I need his reds, which I should already have a red set up. I'm just gonna switch it. Color. No. And then delete. Bandage. Bandage. Gradient maps. And then we'll set that to color. And then we'll duplicate that. 40% overlay. All right, and then I'm going to save this. The idea is that once you do the roughie, you can drag these gradient maps back in here and you don't have to make them again. But I wanted to show you how I make them. So I'd be done by now if I was, setting this up because all the gradient maps would have been set up already. But like I said, I wanted to show how this is done. I normally don't do a whole video on this, but you know. So he's got gold, which I think will work fine. The gun gold will work. I try to reuse as many of these color patterns as I can. It keeps the piece uniform. If you have too many subtle shifts in colors or color schemes, then you run the risk of it looking off. So I'll just get the gold gun and there, and he's got these little blue pieces on his hair. And I'm going to make those blue steel. No, actually those need their own. Be really nice if that actually selected what I wanted it to. And he has this pink to magenta purple thing going on. Ghost purple. And then he needs bones. So let me get all his bones. Call him Pink Bones. And then his clothing, dark purple robe. 50. I like to leave. Okay, motherfucker. I leave the layer mask on the folder, not on the actual gradient if I can. So I can add, now we have to keep creating multiple masks. And then we save. So at this point, right, what I will do is go eat dinner. But then what I do is, I'll show you. I'll come down here, I'll turn gradient maps off. Now, if you paint with the gradient maps on, I have 32 gigs of RAM and an i7, like quad, 4-core, whatever. It's this the computer's 6 months old. You know, it's brand new. You will run into slowdown the more you try to paint in color. Doesn't matter how fast your computer is. So if I come over here and I just start painting in, it's going to chug a little bit. If I turn this off, it'll be much faster. So the trick is to kind of like, as you're painting, double check, right? So I'll go in and actually start to globally paint everything. One of the first things I have to do, I can already tell you, is I got to set up all this guy's rocks. Where's Rockfire? So him and him minus that there invert. I don't want the colors affecting the main characters right now. Once they're all set up, then I can take the coloration of the background and do a multiply layer over these characters and tie them in. So one thing I'm curious about is trying to figure out what's affecting. Why does that change? I'm trying to figure out. Okay, there. That is weird. All right, so one of the things I'm curious about is something changed while I was setting this up, and it's on his rocks. That should be orange, so I'm trying to figure out what shift. What happened? It shifted. Yeah, it shifted. I must have hit Control Z and it shifted my settings over. Normal. All right, so let's do this shit again. This is so annoying. There we go. So let's get rid of this fucking thing. So we'll set this. So I'm not coloring him. I'm just doing this so I know the eyes will turn out right. This is why it's important. Once you get these things set up, you save them. You know, like I have a whole folder now of just these gradient maps. So now these are new characters, so I haven't colored these characters before. But if you were working on your own book or Spider-Man or something like that, you'll have the same color schemes over and over again. You can just drag the gradient maps in, they all work. So a little annoying to set up at first. Once you figure out how it works though, because look, boom. Alrighty. So let me save that. I gotta go make dinner. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I will answer. I answer them all. And then I will log back on here in a couple hours and start painting this thing. So talk to you soon. Bye.